messed up so bad you just thought God can't use you anymore? Have you ever been broken to the point where you just wonder, how am I ever going to recover? As we get to our text tonight, in John chapter 21, verse 15 through 19, Jesus asked Peter, "Do you love me?" And at this point in time, Peter has gone from a braggadocious, know-it-all, first one to speak, to where he really just can't answer Jesus the same again. As we look at this life of Peter, there's even to a point where I believe where Peter needed to be broken in order for Christ to use him the way that Christ wanted to use him. And there are times in our lives, I think, that we go through a time of breaking. And we go through a time where God just has to knock our personality and knock our arrogance and just really has to break us down to where we can be used. Last month I went down to Texas to a pastor's conference, and listening to all the different pastors and the things that they've gone through, I've about come to the conclusion that all pastors have been broken some point in their life. And yet God uses a bunch of broken people to carry out His work. In fact, if you remember when the Pharisees were getting on to Jesus about the people that He was associating with, Jesus said, "I didn't come to call the righteous, but to call the sick." And when you think about it, a lot of people have called church a hospital for sinners. And that's probably right. But the problem is there's no doctors. We just got one physician, and that's Jesus. And all the rest of us are just trying to get them there. And so as we see in our text tonight, in John 21, verse 15 through 19, he says, "And so when they had dined, Jesus said to Simon Peter, 'Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me more than these?' And he said unto him, 'Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee.' And he said unto him, 'Feed my lambs.' And he said to him a second time, 'Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me?' And he said unto him, 'Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I love thee.' And he said unto him, 'Feed my sheep.' And he said unto him the third time, 'Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me?' And Peter was grieved because he said unto him the third time, 'Lovest thou me?' And he said unto him, 'Lord, thou knowest all things, and thou knowest that I love thee.' And Jesus said unto him, 'Feed my sheep. Verily, verily, I say unto thee, when thou wast young, and thou didst girdest thyself and walkest whether thou wouldest, but when thou shalt be old, thou shalt stretch forth thy hands, and another shall gird thee and carry thee whither thou wouldest not go.' This spake he, signifying what death he should glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he said unto him, 'Follow me.'" As we see where Peter's at here, this is after the resurrection of Jesus. Jesus has come back, and Peter is so glad that Jesus has come back to life. But we can probably, if we were to do a kind of a timeline, this is probably maybe a week or so away from the night before Christ was crucified. If you think back to the night before Christ was crucified, as they took of the Lord's Supper. He has washed their feet, gave them the Lord's Supper. He has taken them out into the garden to pray, and he has a conversation with them. He says, guys, I'm going to die, and every one of you are going to forsake me. And in Mark chapter 14, Peter brags. He says, even though all these leave you, I will never leave you. And as we see where we are today, Peter has denied Jesus 3 times before the rooster crowed, and now Peter's quitting. Peter told the rest of the guys, he said, I'm going fishing. They weren't going for a men's retreat. Peter was quitting the ministry. Peter has been broken so bad by his failure, and he's beaten himself up so much that he thinks, I'm not worthy to walk and serve Jesus. And so he says, I'm going fishing. Peter was a fisherman, and Peter is basically saying, I'm going back to what I used to be. I can't do this anymore. And so as we see here, Jesus is confronting him in his sin. As he's confronting him in the sin, he's confronting his failure. And the thing that we know about this failure, Jesus even told Peter in Luke chapter 22, verse 31, he told them, this is the conversation that they were having before his crucifixion. He says, Peter, Satan has desired to have you, that he might sift you like wheat. But Peter, when you're strengthened, convert the brothers. So, as we see here, Peter, as he's failed through all the things that's going on, Jesus had warned him multiple times that he's going to fail. Peter, Satan wants you. He wants to take you out. He wants to shake you up. He wants to mess you up. And Peter's saying, no, Lord, I'll never forsake you. And Jesus says, before the rooster crows in the morning 2 times, you're going to deny me 3 times. And as you read on a little bit further, when the rooster crows that 3rd time that Peter denied Jesus, he denied this young maiden had accused him of being a follower of Christ, of being one of the disciples. And that 3rd time that Peter denied him, he done it in the swearing fit. Basically cursing Jesus. And then that rooster crowed. Can you imagine how Peter felt when that rooster crowed? As he's just not only denied Jesus, but he has cursed Jesus. And he looks, and there's Jesus looking at him across the wall, across the court. And it breaks him, and he goes out and he wept bitterly. And here we are, maybe a week or so later. And Peter's not over it yet. But yet, as we see here, Jesus is here, fixing breakfast. You know, that had to be a wonderful breakfast. Just a week before, Peter thought he had lost the greatest friend he ever had. When Jesus died upon the cross, all of the disciples thought everything that we put in Jesus, all of our hope, we left our nets, we left our boats, we left our families, we left our fathers, we've left everything. And we've done this for 3.5 years, and now he's on the cross, and now we've got nothing. Not to mention he lost his best friend. He's beaten down to the point where Satan, when he sifted him down, he beat him down to the point where Peter thought, I have no value. But yet, Jesus confronts him. He confronts him here as Jesus cooks this breakfast. You know, it's an amazing thing. People talk about, well, there's no proof of Jesus. How do you know Jesus done anything? Well, here he is cooking breakfast. I've been to Waffle House, and I thought those folks might be ghosts, but they're not. But Jesus is cooking breakfast for him. And he confronts him. Here's the thing about love. Love is not always that good old mushy feeling. Love is going to confront your brothers and your sisters when they're caught up in sin. And our God loves us, and Jesus loves us enough that he confronts us in our sin. And here he comes to Peter. He says, Peter, do you love me more than these? And I've heard a lot of people debate, what are the these? Are they the fish? Are they the boat? No, it's the other disciples. And Jesus is confronting him basically with the words that he said before the crucifixion. Even though all these leave you, I will never leave you. And Jesus says, do you love me now more than these? He confronts him in his sin. He confronts him where he's at. And Jesus' confrontation, it's hard because he asked him, do you love me more than these guys? Now, if you'd read the first part of this chapter, it is Peter who jumps out of the boat. He can't wait to get off the boat to go see Jesus. He's jumped off the boat and swam to Jesus because he wants to be with Jesus. Nobody else did. He loves to be around Jesus, but he's just not going to serve him right now. Just not good enough. But yet Jesus confronts him. Do you love me more than these? It's real easy to say how much you love Jesus when nobody's batting at you. It's real easy to say how much you love Jesus when you're in church and everybody here thinks like you do, or at least for the most part. It's real easy to talk about how much you love Jesus when everything is going good, but let the world come out and make accusations. And how much do you love Jesus? I would dare say every one of us have failed somewhere, and it just eats at us, doesn't it? There's been times where I'd have an opportunity to have a conversation with somebody, and I would just back out. And it eats at me. And I have failed. But yet Jesus confronts him. Now what's the big deal about Jesus confronting him? Because Jesus has not given up. Jesus has never given up on his people. And he will never give up on his people. He will always confront us. Why? Because he wants us. He will confront us because he wants to use us. And he will confront us because he wants to call us out of our sin. And so the second thing that we see here is Jesus is calling Peter out of his failures. As bad as Peter has messed up, Jesus is still calling Peter to serve him. Notice as Jesus, there's 3 times. There's 3 times where he says, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, yes, Lord, I love you. And you know what Jesus says? Feed my lambs. Peter, son of Jonas, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Feed my sheep. Peter, son of Jonas, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you. Feed my sheep. It's an interesting thing as he's calling him to feed the sheep. He starts out with taking care of the lambs. The second one is tending. It's that feed is all, it means shepherd them. It's not just pouring out food. In fact, a lot of times we think about feeding, and I have to get my agricultural nerd out of me. The way that we feed animals today is not the way they've always done it. Up until the last when you think about this, up until the point where we were growing enough grain, where we've got too much grain, we never fed animals grain because they were barely making enough grain for their own food. So they would feed them, whether it were feeding them in the pastures. A lot of the time, where they feed the lamb is literally pouring the food out for them. But feeding the sheep is taking them, as you would think about Psalm 23, you take them to the good grass. You take them out in the wilderness. You take them through the things of life. And that last feeding is just basically, Peter, I want you to take care of my sheep from the time they're born until the time I call them home. Here's what God is calling him to do. I want you to continue my work. What greater job is it in this world than to take care of the flock of Jesus Christ? I forget which preacher said, he said to leave my church and go become the President of the United States would be a step down. Jesus is calling him out of his sin, out of his failures, and to come and serve him. Peter, you're not too far gone. Peter, you're not so far out that I can't use you. But in fact, Christ is the one who allowed Peter to be shaken. As you see, I'm not going to turn there, but in Luke chapter 22 and verse 31, Jesus says, it basically says, whenever Satan has desired to have you, Satan has come to Jesus and asked permission to get Peter. And just like God allowed Job to be shaken and to be sifted by Satan, Satan was allowed to shake and sift Peter. Why? Because Peter needed it. And I'm not going to tell you that God's leading you to sin, but God will lead you to brokenness. And it's in our brokenness. I dare to say it's in our brokenness that we really come to realize, yes, Jesus, I love you. In this situation here, there's no coincidence where Jesus asked Peter 3 times, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And I can imagine that every time that Jesus said this, that Peter's imagining in his mind how he denied Jesus. And Jesus is confronting him about it. And it is not pleasant whenever Jesus confronts us. As you're reading through the Bible, we got people that want to say, as you read through the Bible, you should just be filled with joy and you should just be filled with happiness and there should be no sorrow as you are walking with Jesus. Well, the problem is we mess it up. And he has to come and be a good shepherd. You know, a good shepherd has a rod and a staff. One for pulling us back and one for knocking us in the head when we won't come back. And what he does here is he is confronting Peter in his brokenness. And he says, Peter, I still want you to serve me. I called you on the seashores of Galilee the first time, and now we are on the seashore of Galilee, and I'm calling you to renew your commitment to follow me. But the last thing that Jesus does about his failure, he comes to Peter. Now, it seems kind of odd when I first was looking at that, how I worded that. He comes to us, he confronts us, he calls us, and he comes to us. Have you ever thought about God? And just sit there and think about God for a second. When you think of God, He's high and lifted up. I think of Isaiah 6. High and lifted up. And as I think about God, and I think about there in Revelation 14, where His voice is like mighty rushing waters. And I think about God as He tells Moses, Moses says, Lord, I want to see you. And as He says, Moses, no man can see me unless he dies. And I think about Abraham and Isaac as they're going up the mount to offer a sacrifice. And Abraham is going up, and he told Sarah, he says, I'm going to go offer the son. I'm going to offer the boy. Now, I don't think he was a little boy. He's big enough to tote wood. He's big enough to think. Probably a grown man. And as he's going up that mountain, he says, hey, Dad, we've got wood. We've got fire. Where's the lamb? And Abraham says some words that have always struck me as poetic. God will provide Himself a lamb. Not only is God going to provide the lamb, He will be the lamb. God came down to us. Let that sink in a minute. We've messed up for years and years and years and years. And this world just seems like it just never does quite figure it out. But it's a big mess of sin, and He comes down to us. But not only does He come down to us, but Jesus comes down to where Peter's at. Let me explain this. There's a lot of scholars and a lot of language people, and I don't normally bring up the Greek language because I can't speak it, and you wouldn't know if I did anyway. But when Jesus says, Peter, do you love me? He uses two different words. He says the first two times, Peter, do you agape? It is an unconditional, no matter what, love. Do you know that Peter never said, yes, Lord, I agape? How could he? Let's just be honest. If you had cheated on your spouse 3 times and your wife says, do you love me? Are you going to be able to say, yeah, I love you? Peter here has denied Jesus 3 times. And so when Peter says, yes, Lord, I love you, it's a phileo. You would understand this as Philadelphia, a brotherly love. Yes, Lord, I love you. And there's some scholars that say, well, they're basically the same equivalent. Then why would they use different words? See, Jesus is coming to him and saying, do you have an unconditional love for me? Something that Peter had bragged about beforehand. I love you, Lord. I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. But now Peter is saying, I have a strong emotional pull to you. And he was honest. But here's what I want you to see here. That last time that Jesus says, Peter, do you love me? He doesn't use agape. He uses phileo. What is Jesus doing? All right, Peter, you can't reach here. But can you come here? Peter, you're on your knees. Peter, you're broke down, and you can't say, oh, I love you, Lord. You're on your knees and just begging, God, I love you, but I'm messed up. And Jesus is coming to him and says, do you phileo me? And it's when Peter's heart is broken. Peter, when he hears him say, do you love me? He doesn't just say, yes, Lord, I love you. He says to him, he was grieved because he'd asked him the third time. He says, Lord, you know all things, and you know that I love you. He's broken. It's sinking in. And Jesus is saying, do you got this much? And whenever God is calling us, there are times when God calls us and we say, I can't reach that. And here's the wonderful thing about Jesus. He says, can you reach this? He reaches down. You know, Peter is not the first person that Jesus has reached down to. You even think about the woman at the well and the conversation that Jesus has with the woman at the well. What does the woman at the well tell Jesus about the Messiah? And then she even goes to the people in town and says, come see a man who told me all things. Doesn't the Messiah come and tell us all things? Why didn't Jesus tell her about him being lifted up on the pole like he did Nicodemus? It's because she was low, and what she knew about the Messiah was very little. So Jesus reached down where she was to make her understand who he is. What did she know about Jesus? Did she know that he was going to go down on the cross? No. Did she know that he was coming to atone for sins? No. Did she know that he was the picture of the lamb that was in the Passover? No. What did she know? He's the Messiah. And that's enough. And she reached up to where he was. But I was thinking about this. I wonder how many times Peter thought about this conversation. How many times in his life did he go back to that conversation? You ever have a conversation when your parents or somebody gets on to you and they do it in love and you go back to that over and over again? There was one of the preacher friends of mine, he was telling me he got kids my age, so he was telling me at the first church that he pastored, there was a guy there that just loved him. He said, and I done something stupid one time. He said, I wrote a check and I wasn't paying attention to he said, and I was like a little bit off and it bounced. He said, and that guy gave me the kindest chewing out I ever received in my life. And that guy's in his 60s and he remembers for 40-something years that kind rebuke. And Peter remembers this. And I want you, we'll go over to 2 Peter. 2 Peter chapter 1. As Peter writes later, way on later down the line. 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 5. And he says, and besides this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, and to your virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness, and to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity. Just so you know, brotherly kindness is phileo, and charity is agape. So years down the line, Peter has understood. And he comes to these other Christians who are suffering just like he did. Maybe in a slightly different way, but Satan is trying to stomp out these Christians. He says, guys, add to what you got. Add to virtue, or add to your faith virtue. And add and add and add. And then brotherly kindness. Brotherly love. Phileo. And when you build on that, the last thing to put on there is that agape, that love. And as we go through our lives, Jesus is asking us, do we love Him? We don't have to have it all figured out. Peter is not a super saint. Don't let anybody lie to you about him being unfallible. Peter was all fallible, just like us. But in his brokenness, he began to understand grace more than he'd ever thought he understood it before. You see, it's in our brokenness whenever God is going to use us. In our brokenness, we start figuring out it's not my ability. In our brokenness, we start figuring out it's not my charismatic personality. In our brokenness, in our sin that we, and I'm not encouraging you to go to sin. I'm just telling you, you're going to have it. But in it, you're going to have to say, I need Jesus. And here, Peter says, you know I love you. And after all this, Jesus simply says, follow me. When Jesus first called Peter, he says, follow me. And some of the last words that Peter remembers is, follow me. You see, it's a very simple thing. It's not much different from the day that we become a Christian to where we are now. The simple brunt of whether or not we're serving God the way that He wants us is, are you following Him? And there's going to be times that you can't say, yes, Lord, I have just the agape love for you. But you take that love and the faith that you've got, and you just carry on. And you carry on. Because no matter how bad you've messed it up, no matter how many times you've messed it up, no matter what's going on, He is simply saying, do you love me? And if you can muster up a phileo, if you can muster up, I am so emotionally drawn to you, you know what He says? Come follow me. Come follow me. Keep following me. You see, I love how that the Bible shows me the failures of the saints. And I love, and this is going to sound crazy, I love to know that Noah messed up. And I love to know that Abraham messed up. And that David messed up. And that Jeremiah messed up. And that Isaiah messed up. And I don't know anywhere where Daniel messed up, but I'm sure he did. I'm glad that John messed up. Not that I want to rejoice in their failures. It just makes me know, okay, they're crazy too. I think it was Laura, somebody asked me when I come back from that pastor's conference. I think it was my sister-in-law asked me. I was talking to her and she said, well, what did you come back with? I said, well, we're all crazy and we're just trying to follow Jesus through it. And the truth of the matter is, as we're dealing with sin in this world, we're dealing with a lot of the crazy. And most of the time, it's not even the crazy out there, it's the crazy right here. I failed, and I failed, and I failed. And He just says, do you love me? Follow me. Do you love me? Follow me. We overcomplicate serving Jesus. We mess up and we say, I can't get up there and do that again. He says, do you love me? Love my sheep. You love me? feed my sheep. You love me? Shepherd my sheep. You love me? Take care of the sheep. I'm at that point in my life where I'm starting to see there's a lot of young people coming up. And they're looking at me. The way that I looked at some of those people that I thought were old when they were in their 40s. And God's using me to encourage them. The way that those other men encouraged me. Isn't that the cycle of the church? We pick up, we carry on, and we keep going. And even when the people that are under us and younger than us and been saved less than us, I mean not less, but less time than us, you know, it's actually good for them to see our failures so that they can see God pick us up. And we can say, yes, I love Jesus. Yes, I love Jesus. Peter was not the same after that. Oh yeah, he messed up again. Read Galatians. He messed up again. But he was on fire. And as Jesus told him how he's about to die, when Peter did die, we don't have this in the Bible. History tells us that they were going to crucify Peter, and he says, I can't be crucified like my Lord. So they crucified him upside down because he was not worthy to die like Jesus. But he was willing to die for Jesus. Took him probably another 30 or 40 years before he died. Maybe a little longer than that. But he did. You see, it's not about the failures along the way. It's getting up and going on again. You just get back up. Because he's going to confront you, he's going to call you, and he's going to use you. The question is, do you love him? In my life, the blessing that I've always had, I've wanted to quit preaching a lot. Not preaching, pastoring. I've wanted to quit pastoring a lot. I love preaching. But I just have the Lord saying, do you love me? Like Jeremiah, I've got a fire in my bones. Say, I'm not a preacher. If you're a child of God, you are a preacher. You may not be in the pulpit. You may not be the Sunday school teacher. But you are a preacher to the people that are around you. And when you want to quit, and when you mess up, and you think, well, they see me as a failure. Okay, they probably do. But do you love him? Follow him. And if that fire is in your heart, you're his. He's confronting you. And keep going. This time, we're going to have a verse of invitation, brother. As we have a time of verse of invitation, if you'll stand tonight, maybe you're in one of those falls right now. Maybe you have failed miserably somehow or another. Don't come and confess to me, but take it to Jesus. Take it to him and let him call you out of that failure. Let him say, follow me. And do it. You may not be able to say, I'm just on fire for you, Lord, but you've got a little fire. You've got a little faith. And one man said, Lord, help me with my faith. The best prayer we could ever ask is, Lord, help me with my faith. Lord, help me with my fire. As we sing.